You see me? Right, we're live. Hi, good evening. Welcome. This is Roy Lilley. John's on the camera tonight. The blonde isn't here, so I'm having to be like the hunchback of Notre Dame doing this. Right? Is that about right, John? Can you see all of me?
Sadly, yes.
Can I stand up? Right, okay. Listen, welcome to the King's Fund. It's a lovely sunny evening here, cold but great evening. And we've got a great evening ahead of us as well. The future of general practice, primary care, family practice, and the future of the NHS is all rolled into one, isn't it? And so tonight we've got a superb guest to come and talk that through with us, and it's the boss of the Royal College of General Practitioners. Who would have thought it? With a name like Lampard, I thought you'd be playing football, but anyway, it's lovely to see you. Come and join me. Thank you so much. Big warm welcome.
Thanks
Thank you so
very
much.
much.
Come and sit down. Come and have a seat. Big round of applause from this enormous audience. Helen Stokes-Lampard. Now, how do you get a Stokes and a Lampard? How does that work?
Well, you start by being married, born a Stokes, and then you get married to a Lampard.
Yeah.
And you qualify as Dr. Stokes and live a while as Mrs. Lampard, and it gets really confusing and a bit tedious. And in the end, I just thought, I'm going to run the two together.
Really?
My mother-in-law suggested I became Stokes de Lampard, because apparently Lampards were de Lampards a few generations ago.
No, I thought you were part of the Redknapp family. I thought we were going to talk football all night, but there you are.
No, I prefer the other game.
So you're a Welsh girl from Swansea.
Yes, marvellous.
Okay, did you always, are you one of these little girls that bandaged up her teddy and always wanted to be a...
No, actually, I grew up in a family with no medics in the family at all. Parents were teachers, but came from a very working class background. And when I was growing up, I was interested in people. I was interested in science, and there is one photo of me with bandaged my brother up, but that was about it. That was possibly more to do with sibling rivalry than anything else. Yeah. But actually, as I was growing up, it was kind of, I thought about medicine, I thought seriously about dentistry, I thought about engineering.
What put those thoughts into your mind?
Well, I think it's role models and it's people you meet. So my dad taught science, and I saw people struggle with A-levels. And I remember when I was about 10 years old, somebody saying, "Oh, what would you like to do when you grow up?" I said, "Oh, perhaps I'd like to be a doctor." And
never thought about being a teacher?
No, although naturally, I love to teach, and so, but no, it was always more the science things. But I think when I said that, somebody said, "Oh, it's very difficult to be a doctor. You know, not many people get through training." And I kind of just assumed that I wasn't bright enough to do it, and so I put it out of my head. But a dear family friend was a dentist, and I was very impressed with her. She was really sort of grounded and fun and inspiring, and she was doing great things. And as a teenager, I went and stayed with her for a little holiday, and I thought, I'm going to be a dentist. It's great, you know, great fun. And then when I did my O-levels, because I'm off generation, we did O-levels. I got quite good results, and I went off to a sixth form college, and people said, "Oh, so you're going to do medicine?" I said, "Well, I haven't really thought about it." And I said, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, toying a bit of engineering, possibly dentistry."
Well, engineering was a big choice as well, wasn't it? We don't get many engineers.
Yeah, I mean, I can't, you know, my dad always treated me as a person, not as a girl or a boy. And I had a lot of role models as I was growing up who were, gender wasn't a big deal, and I don't know whether it was just about coming from quite a working class background where everyone just pitched in and did whatever needed to be done. And I've always been quite practical, always happy to have a go. So, you know, whether it was digging the garden with Dad or fixing something, you know, so I've always been fairly practical. And I think my dad was like, "The world needs more engineers, it'd be great to have an engineer." And my mum was going, "Oh, don't make her do that," with visions of Greece and so on. And so it was genuinely when I started my A-levels when people started saying, "Do you know, medicine's an amazing place to go?" And I started doing some serious homework, thought about things that had happened. You know, parents have health problems, grandparents have health problems. And I thought, "Do you know what, there is some really interesting stuff there." And I started getting interested in gynecology, women's health problems. And I thought, actually, I could do that, because my mum had some issues. And yeah, there's something there. There's a lovely balance of medicine and surgery. We had great family doctors growing up, and so I applied for and went to medical school, although I did mess up my A-levels first time round. I messed up one of my A-levels, which was an interesting learning experience. Went off to St George's, where I had the most amazing time.
Why St George's? Why not a Welsh hospital?
Because I was a teenager in the 1980s and we all wanted to get away. The world was our oyster. And yes, the family would have loved me to go to Cardiff, and Cardiff is a wonderful medical school. I certainly went for a look around to keep everyone happy, but I never wanted it. It was too close to home, even though once you go to university, you can be 5 miles from home and you're a million miles in reality, aren't you? So I just wanted to move further away, and I think there was something about the draw of London. So
So
came
you
from
did your
working class
rotations
background.
around South London?
No, I didn't actually, because when I was in medical school, I met and married my husband, an engineer, and he got a job in South Wales. His first proper job was back in South Wales, ironically, and so I did my first house job in London, and then I went back to South Wales and did my second house job in South Wales.
Was that easy to do? Because it wasn't a devolved responsibility then, was it?
It wasn't easy to do. It took a lot of begging and pleading, but really
Yeah.
sensible people who sorted out the placements in those days. We didn't have a central clearing system; that was locally done, and really sensible, wise people who could see that if your heart and your head are in a different part of the country, you will work better if you're in a different part of the country. And they did try to persuade me to stay, but what they did is they arranged a swap. They contacted Cardiff and said, "We've got a young doctor who wants to do a medical house job in South Wales. Would you like a medical house job in South London? And we'll swap you." And we did. So they were non-medical school jobs, so they were not the professorial jobs. They were regarded very much as the service job. It was an amazing experience. I went to a busy, small DGH. Of course, met a whole bunch of new doctors who are still friends now.
Because the training was different then, was it? You were still attached to a firm?
Yeah, firm-based teaching, so
Yeah.
small firm, very small firm. So I was in a huge firm when I did my surgical
Do you
job.
think we've lost anything by that disappearing now? The rotations are 3 months and you're never in at one place long enough.
Yeah, the richness of that, the importance of that team, that firm, I think is incredibly important. Okay, so I was back there in the bad old days of silly hours and, starting work on a Saturday morning and finishing on Monday night, and you were incapable of coherent conversation, let alone writing a drug chart or doing something important like looking after a patient. But actually what you had was a team. You had that incredible camaraderie. There was always somebody to go to. And I think we really did throw out the baby with the bathwater when we moved forward and made progress with a working time directive and hours. But as a consequence, lost that team structure, that firm. Every nurse knew.
Well, we missed the opportunity, didn't we? Because we went to Europe and said we can't do it. We had a derogation for, was it 5 or 7 years, I think, to sort ourselves out.
Yeah.
We just squandered that time, and then suddenly we were hit with the working time directive, and we had to change everything within 18 months.
And I do believe that the working time directive ultimately is a good thing and a right thing. I think safe doctors are much better doctors, but we could do it better in terms of working as teams.
Well, it's interesting. I mean, if you are a lorry driver, you can only drive for 9 hours. If you're an airline pilot, you can only fly for 2,000 hours a year. But if you're a nurse, you can do 3 back-to-back 12-hour days and then go and do a couple of moonlights in a care home.
Yeah.
And if you're a doctor, well, you'll have to do the rotations, and then if you're in a position to do it, you might well go and do a locum, out of hours. And is it safe? I mean, I don't think it is it?
It's probably not. I think the difficulty with safety is that it's really hard to quantify. It's really hard to put fixed boundaries on it. And obviously I'm very interested in safety in terms of how GPs work, but how their whole team work. And if you can't say X number of minutes or hours or X number of consultations are safe because of that complexity and the intensity of the
know when people are knackered.
Absolutely, know when people are knackered, and you can trust professionals to say, actually, I'm really not safe. I did. So yesterday in my practice, I was duty doctor. I was in the surgery for 13 hours yesterday, and I didn't stop. It was full on and it was frantic. As it happened, there were no desperately sick patients that needed my attention. As it happened, although I saw a huge number of patients, I didn't see too many very high challenge patients. So I got to the end of the day and I wasn't panicking that I'd made a mistake. But actually, at the end of a day like that, and it's only that bad because we've got a doctor off sick, difficulty recruiting, the sort of things that GPs are saying the country over, you are really worried, thinking, my gosh, have I forgotten anything? Have I missed anything? Okay, so I'm an experienced GP and I'm used to safety netting and I keep my lists and I've got my systems and I stick to them and I don't leave the building till I've double checked my own systems to make sure I haven't forgotten anything. But we're all terrified in that onslaught. So it's not right and it's probably not safe. And we all worry that we're one step away from making a serious mistake because of the pressure of the system. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing.
Or you miss something.
Yeah.
Like, in the paper today, all the GPs are missing all these cancer diagnoses. diagnosis, and thank God A&E is there to diagnose them for us.
Well, it's a relief, isn't it?
It's best to go to A&E first. Why mess about with the middleman?
Yeah, but you don't do so well if you go to A&E first, or if you present to A&E, the odds are you'll do worse. Now, that was a spectacularly unhelpful headline today from actually a really quite good piece of research.
Unpack that for us, because it's
Sure.
not what it seems.
Of course, it's not what it seems. So, really good study published in the British Journal of General Practice today, looking at the whole patient pathways for cancer and all cancers, not just some of the big ticket cancers that have been investigated.
Well, that's the
before.
problem, isn't it? Because if we say cancer and you
Yeah.
look at the outcomes, well, actually, to be honest, some of the comparisons aren't that great. But if we compare against the European data, Eurostat, it's collected on a different basis. Some of it isn't collected at all. The death certificates aren't available. I mean, even in Europe, they don't collect stuff. And, you know, you to look at some of the recently accession countries, you know, are we really to believe that the cancer outcomes are better there? No, they do the data differently.
Absolutely, yeah. And you know, we have phenomenal data in the UK, and probably some of the best health data in the world.
It is.
Because we measure it consistently, because we have a universal
Well, we've had
healthcare
it since
system.
1948.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, we've got computerized GP records back to the 80s. You know, you've got all the prescribing data from the 1980s. So we have phenomenal data. And the problem is we're unfairly compared with people who only collect data on people who are privately insured, or people who are only in the state system and exclude the other bits. So, however, there are a few things we can say. We can say that for what we spend per capita on health, we do brilliantly. But we are not as good as the best of the best in certain areas of care. So there are certainly things we can learn and do better, and with better investment and more people, we could do better in some areas.
Bowel cancer we don't do very well, do we?
Yeah, it's somehow difficult again. Lifestyle
Well,
is an
you know
issue. We've got-
why, isn't it? You've got to go spooning around the Kazi for a sample. Who wants to do that? There must be a better test.
There is, although I do have the very sneaky keeping your hands clean way of collecting a sample,
I
which I
don't
can
think
tell
we
you about
might.
again.
This is perhaps something we might just skip over. Usually I'd like to have a penetrating, insightful, but we'll
Very
leave,
happy.
we'll leave the spooning in the Kazi to another time.
Okay,
But there are, I know that there are better tests, but
There
they're
are.
more expensive.
They're more expensive, and you know you've got.
And not only that, you've got to have spoon in the Kazi on 2 separate days. You've got a spoon in the Kazi, put it in a box, bung it in the fridge, and hope no one confuses it with anything else. Coming in late one night after a curry, who knows? And then the next day you've got to do it again.
This sounds like the voice of experience, right?
Yes. Move on.
You're obviously traumatised by it.
Yeah.
Well, you know, we do talk about society. You know, even the Romans recognised the mark of a civilised society was the distance you put between yourself and your excrement. And so, you know, people are fundamentally hardwired to not play with their excrement. You know, so I think that's completely reasonable. It's the same with lots of things we do in health. But actually, some things are good for us, and we have to have a better conversation
That's
about
why
doing
people won't do it. So okay, so you were down. Let me think. Yeah, so where were we? You were down in somewhere in the darkest, deepest Wales. You finished your training, and then.
it. So I started training in obs and gynae.
Something peculiar happened, didn't it? Because you went off and did a research job. You say, am I right? You qualified in medicine, but you've also got a PhD.
I have got a
Yeah.
PhD,
What's
yeah.
your PhD in?
So it's primary care epidemiology.
Yeah.
Numbers and data, but it's about gynecological cancer screening.
Yeah.
So in summary, I am the world expert in a test that we don't do in general practice anymore.
Right.
So, you know, it's really helpful to be an expert in this much. Vault smears, which were the tests that we used to do on women who didn't have a cervix anymore. So the smear test, you know, everyone's familiar with cervical screening. When women had had a hysterectomy, until about 7 or 8 years ago, GPs often would do a couple of what were called vault smears. That was taking a similar sample from the scar that was left internally when the womb and the cervix were gone. The problem is it's a really unreliable test because it was never designed to work that way. And it took some years of research to basically prove it was a rubbish test and we shouldn't be doing it anymore. And I published my PhD and actually persuaded the screening program to take it out just like that, suddenly. You know, years of work you build up to it. It was almost a non-event. It's just gone overnight.
So it needed someone to publish.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So it is interesting. And
Yeah.
but
It's hard to get published, isn't it?
It is hard to get published.
Yeah.
But you know, I didn't. But actually, it was the conversation I had with the screening people that really mattered. It was that individual interaction.
Yeah. But I mean, for a relatively young doctor, as you were at the time, I'm not saying you weren't well qualified, but I mean, you know, to produce a paper and change the face of national screening, saved a lot of money. And
Well,
no, I'm just interested in the whole topic of clinicians,
Yeah.
doctors, and younger doctors mainly, and younger nurses being able to get published. The whole thing seems to be loaded against them.
So I was lucky in the way it landed, okay? So lots of serendipity in my career and the way life has gone. So I did start gynecology, so I trained in obs and gynae in South Wales for several years, had some life events, decided to change direction, ended up in the Midlands, looking
Birmingham,
in Birmingham. So Birmingham.
Birmingham Women's Hospital.
Oh, actually Birmingham Medical School, Birmingham University.
Right.
So no, I never.
Did you not go to Birmingham?
So I did my research. Ultimately, because of my background in gynae, when I got a job as an academic GP trainee, so I applied for and got a job as a trainee where I did half GP training and half academic training.
I see,
so
because it's a really wacky career path.
It is wacky, it is wacky, and it was total serendipity. I phoned up the West Midlands Deanery. I wanted to do public health. That was the idea. If you can't save the individual, save society.
Save the
move
world.
to public health. Well, clearly.
Yeah.
Go to public health, had a lovely chat with the people in public health, and they said, oh, your CV's great, but you do need some experience in general practice. Here's the number of the people who can give you a job in general practice. Phoned up, and they said, oh, you've just missed the training round, but we've got these academic jobs, and if you want to do public health, an academic background would be great. And in fact, the phone was answered in West Midlands Deanery by a chap called Steve Field.
Oh yes, I remember him. Yeah, didn't he used to be a GP? Yeah,
certainly was. Still is a GP.
Yes. Didn't he mess up the Lansley reforms?
Steve Field
almost single-handedly.
Steve is a great man and a great GP.
Hi, Steve. I know you watch. Yeah.
So he answered the phone and he said, "Great job. Why don't you apply? Get your CV to me by 5 o'clock." And this is pre-email days. This is running to HR for a copy of my CV, saying, "Please, have you got a copy of my CV?" Because I was in work as a junior doctor, grabbing it, annotating it, faxing it off. And the next thing, being interviewed for and getting this job as an academic. And this sounded terribly grand, and I had no idea what it really meant, but it's a chance to learn to teach, learn to do research, and train to be a GP, which is fantastic.
That's a unique opportunity.
Well, it's not unique. We've got schemes across the country. You can do academic GP training, both the foundation.
Unique, yeah.
It's uncommon because academic...
Yeah. I thought you were involved with the Birmingham Women's Hospital.
Well, my research, so the University of Birmingham is on the same site as Queen Elizabeth Hospital and Birmingham Women's Hospital. Because
they've all had a big reshuffle up there,
They've always reshuffling in Birmingham.
Yeah.
So, while I was a medical student...
Two Desk Jane is running both places now.
Well,
yeah.
There's all sorts of stuff.
Do you think there should be a women's hospital? There's no men's hospital, is there? What's so important about women?
Well, it's a historic... Well, where to begin? How long have you got, Roy?
Just looking around the audience, I think I'm on safe territory tonight. Rarely.
Don't count.
I was going to say.
Unusually.
So no.
Well,
So
you,
th-
well,
so
you
this is
don't, do
historic. So
you? You
this is
don't get a
historical.
men's hospital.
These things are historical because they came out of maternity units and maternity hospitals and the increasing
So
specialisation
it's all
of
about
obstetrics.
plumbing.
It's a little more sophisticated
Ladies
than
plumbing.
that. Interestingly, women's hospitals don't just do women's stuff because they do infertility care, which is male and female orientated. So it's not just, they also do genetics work, which again, male and female.
But this
it's about
women's,
providing-
this whole women's thing interests me because you're a specialist in women's health, and in
I'm
some
a GP.
yeah, well, in some parts of the world, women's health is just about fertility, family planning, and all that kind of stuff. But actually, you know, if you look at the role of women globally, they bear the burden of poverty, they bear the burden of family and family distress, they bear the burden of or education or non-education. I mean, there's a lot of public health issues that mitigate against the health of women, but women still stubbornly live longer than men.
It's remarkable.
It's really irritating. Well, I tell you why. It's because men lead blameless lives and are taken unto our Lord early.
Do you think so?
Yes.
That's
Isn't that
a
right, guys?
fascinating hypothesis, right?
Yes. I may get my next PhD at that. What do you think?
Would you let me know? I'd be interested to review it for you. No, I mean, I think, you know, we talk now about women's issues, and you're right, it's far bigger than just gynecology, you know, mental health. It's in the UK, you know, we're a developed world, we have equality laws, we're not talking about women who aren't educated and women who haven't got access to contraception, and, you know, we are a different world here, but in other parts of the world, it's very basic, and you're absolutely right. In the UK, women's health, of course, it's much greater. Perinatal and postnatal mental health is a serious issue and has consequences, but that has consequences for the whole family. And you're right, women, of course, tend to be the ones who use more resource in terms of healthcare when they're younger because they're bringing children to healthcare services, and by being
Well,
pregnant.
if you look at the whole healthcare system, we employ more women than men.
Yeah.
We care for more, the time spent on men and women. We spend more time on women for the reasons that you've just said.
We spend plenty on men.
Yeah, no, but we spend more time,
Yeah.
and also women are most likely to be carers.
Yes.
But probably the NHS is the most unfriendly women employer in the world, I would think. You know, you get hospitals employing 8,000 nurses and not a creche to be seen.
Well, and I mean, I think that sort of stuff is crazy because we have got the scale and size to be doing it and doing it so much better. When you compare us to family-friendly employers and to great employers, there is certainly a lot more that can be done. But we're not the worst place for employing women, absolutely not. You know, there are...
Well, not in GP land, because half of GPs are women now, aren't they?
I think it's probably even more than that. It's certainly going into it, it's significantly more now, so yeah. Which is, but that's great.
Right.
We choose
I've
the
given
best.
up with my GP.
We choose the best.
My
Go on.
GP's retired, and he's been
Is he allowed
replaced.
to retire?
He's been replaced by a young lady, and I just couldn't go.
Couldn't you?
No.
You might be pleasantly surprised.
No,
She's
I couldn't.
marvellous.
No, I could. Well, she probably, but I can't. You know, it's not. I don't know. You know, it's geezers, isn't it? You know,
Is
I
it?
want to see another geezer.
But you see-
That's why I want men's health.
But you see, well, there are experts. There are plenty of GPs who are experts in men's health as
It's
well.
all women
But
now.
you see, right, when you go and see a GP, the GP will adapt their style to you. Now, I have patients just like you.
No, you don't.
Well, I have patients who appear to be quite similar to you. And I just said that
Last time I saw my GP, he was in Albufeira in a restaurant. He was very surprised to see me because he was there with the practice manager.
Great. I'm sure they're having a business meeting.
Absolutely, it makes it easy for me to get an appointment though. No, he's retired now, and the place is run by women.
Gosh, does it run beautifully?
Well, I won't go because there's no geezer service.
Well, then you can register with a practice that has a geezer service.
Well, it's not that easy because it's all women. You see, what are all the old geezers? What's going to happen to men's
Then
health?
you should give it a try and come and chat and see a female GP because they're marvellous. And seriously, people do adapt their
I've
style
got
to
maggots in
yours.
my scrotum. I mean,
Have
how can
you?
you say that?
I think that's a very interesting symptom. Would you like to expand on that, Ron?
You've not seen the Book of Mormon show, have you?
I haven't, no.
No, it's a great show. If you're not watching this,
Free
you've got to
advertising.
go and see the Book of Mormon. It's in the West End.
Yeah, I've seen it advertised.
And it's it's a story of Jehovah's Witnesses going in, and they go to Africa, right? And they all think they're going to get a job in Las Vegas, but these two guys who are very youthful get sent to some African place which is like horrendous. And when they arrive, they say, right, we're here to help you, and God will help you. And so somebody comes and, you know, my crops have failed. He said, we'll pray for your crops. And then somebody else comes and might fail. Then this guy comes in, he says, I've got maggots in my scrotum. You see, the audience like break up. And these guys who were very young, obviously they don't know what to say, you know, and they said, have you seen a doctor? And he said, I am the doctor. Which is, I've just given away the best gag in the Book of Mormon.
Okay.
But you must come and see it. I don't know how we got onto that.
I've had some great things that patients have said to me, but often through language difficulties. So. Anyway, we digress.
Right, where were we? Yes, yes, men are very ill-served by the NHS. Anyway, so you've been something.
In your humble opinion.
You've been a something. It's correct. You've been something of a dilettante in GP land. Worked one day a week as a GP and ended up the most influential GP in Britain. How the hell did that happen?
I wonder that myself sometimes, Roy. I do wonder that myself.
Where did you get elected? It's outrageous. I mean, there are proper GPs working 13 hours a day.
Exactly like me yesterday.
Yeah, you're floating about, palavering about writing papers.
So I did the academic thing, which is 50-50 academic and general practice. So trained in the city of Birmingham in the practice, got a really good grounding in the realities of life, but then did the academic thing and decided that actually I wanted to do a bit more with it. I was interested in the gynae thing. It took years to do the various bits of research to come together to get to that PhD. But also I was sponsored and funded by the National Institute of Health Research, the NIHR, so they offer scholarships to people to pay for them to have the time to devote to research. Because you're right, it is hard to get into the research world. You need to dedicate a lot of time to do it well, because in this day and age, bad research isn't worth doing. You need to do, by all means, do a bit of pilot stuff, get an idea, but make sure if you're going to really invest time that you're doing a proper research,
Yes.
that you can then publish.
Well, I
because if
think-
you can't publish it,
But don't you think, I mean, there's a lot of people out there who are doing really good things.
Yes.
And they don't publish their papers like you did. I think you're a great example of someone who really against all odds at a time when, you know, when the world was very different then, you know, about you're a woman,
Yeah.
you know, it was different for women then. You published, you were young, you got published. It's very hard to get published.
It is, but actually, having scholars, so there's a difference between doing the full academic thing, which isn't for everybody, but there is space, and if you're really keen, there are opportunities and ways to do it. But then there's scholarship, there's accepting that we need to find out more, that doing things well and having a scientific or evidence base is something that all of us in healthcare can get involved in. So getting involved in research doesn't necessarily mean being the principal investigator and leading it and publishing in your own name, but it can be having a good idea, talking to research departments in your hospitals or in your community, in your CCG or in your locality, and helping that research, letting other people perhaps run it, but then being a part of it, contributing. So in general practices, doing research, patients love being part of research, and we haven't got enough real-world research, real grounded research about patients who are complicated.
I don't think we have enough route to market with the results, because you get the big institutions like the Lancet and BMJ, and they're very good and very academic, and I'm not being critical, but they don't make it easy.
They don't, but it is widening the path. So there are a lot of the open access places where you can publish more easily. You've got to pay for it, but you can publish. So if you've had funding to do the research in the first place, now you factor in the cost of publishing as well. So that is easier. The internet has helped.
Do you think it should be free?
Publishing? I think that all good quality research should be available to everybody. So yes, I do think it should be free, but ultimately everything is a cost, so nothing is truly free. Somebody's paying somewhere, so we've got to be pragmatic about it.
Well, I don't want to get sidetracked by that, but anyway, but it's a subject that it's interesting to me.
Well, it's a moral imperative.
I'd like to try and do something about it myself.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there you go. You've done it. What you were the treasurer for the Royal College of.
So
how do I suppose you have to join the college?
So nowadays, everybody who becomes a GP in the country has to do our membership examination. You don't have to stay a member, but you have to do the exam to be a licensed practitioner. Sorry, why? Why don't you have to?
Well, if you're qualified, then what's you got to do with the Royal Colleges poking their nose in? I mean, if you're qualified, you're qualified.
Scientific knowledge applied with compassion, right? Lifelong learning, comradeship, support. Really?
Yeah.
Don't you have anything you believe in?
No, I don't believe the Royal Colleges. I'd close them down. Yeah.
Would you?
Yeah.
Well, you could close them down, but something else would fill the gap. There is a need. People wouldn't stay members. It's not mandatory to stay. We have a great time.
It's a nice place, though, the Royal Colleges. If you come to London, 60 Euston Square, 30 Euston. No, don't go to 60. Go to 30. Sorry, that's where I've been going. 60 is very nice. Yes. 60 is great.
60 is something else.
Yeah, in fact, you can rent a bedroom by the hour. Maybe I'm in the wrong place. No, 30 Euston Square is. Go to the coffee shop. It's fantastic.
Free Wi-Fi, lovely coffee.
Yeah, get someone to show you around. It's a great place for a coffee.
No, it's a fab, and it's amazing headquarters, and it was a big, exciting thing which overlap.
Well, it was a bit. So you were there when the decision was made, because you ripped the place apart.
We did. So How
did all that happen?
So I was elected as treasurer when the decision had been made and the building had been bought and the builders were already in. So
How did you get elected treasurer? Is treasurer one of the jobs that nobody wants to do?
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I ended up in my local faculty I ended up as a trainee rep for the college when I was young, because I was noisy and interested and wanted to make a difference. Then I started with my academic career, did the local faculty thing, so regional college in the Midlands. And somebody asked me to be treasurer because I was doing an epidemiology PhD, so clearly numbers didn't scare me. I liked a spreadsheet. I love a good spreadsheet. So, but as I always say, with treasurer stuff and money, I learned to add up and take away by the time I was 5. Money's not difficult. It's adding up and taking away. It's people that are difficult and people that are interesting. So I ended up as treasurer locally, and then after doing that for 7 years, the big job came up, and Steve Field again said, you should go for that. In fact, he said to a room full of people, help me encourage her to go for it. So I did.
Steve Field's got a lot to answer.
He's got a lot to answer.
Yeah, okay. Right, and then you had a big drama there, didn't you? Because you fell out with the builders.
Well, doesn't everybody?
Well, I suppose you do. Really. Most of us have fallen out with the builders some stage or other. But it's not like building a conservatory, is it?
It's not like building a conservatory. It was a huge project and huge initiative. And despite having our differences with our builders, I'm very pleased. One of my crowning glories as treasurer was we brought the project in on budget, under budget.
Yeah. Who was the architect? A great architect.
Oh, Kathy Tilney was the architect. It was Tilney Shane Associates at the time, although they've been taken over. I think she's retired. But Kathy Tilney was wonderful. So she had a great vision for a fascinating Grade 2 listed building that was some really complex and difficult things to work with. If you've not been there, it's full of Victorian tiling, which is brown and cream in places, green and cream in others, damaged tiling that, because it's grade 2 star listed, you can't fix or do anything with. So you have to work with a really complicated place, but to turn it into something modern and dynamic, which speaks about general practice, obviously reflecting the past, but looking to the future.
Well, you got that permanent exhibition of old implements,
Yeah,
and stuff,
fun.
and bits and pieces,
Yeah.
which is very good. Did she do the inside of the RCN as well? It's a very similar architectural
She
touch.
didn't. No, I don't think
Right.
she did. I don't think she did. No, but it is similar in there.
Well, it's a lovely building, and if ever you're in London, do go to 30 Euston Square, not 60, and have a look. So, okay, and didn't you fall out with somebody? I remember reading that you fell out with another big...
Oh, I don't fall out with
No,
people.
you had a court case or something. I can't remember who it was now. Who
You're
was
talking
it?
about the college exam.
That's right, the exam where you upset all the Asian doctors by discriminating against them. It was outrageous. How did you get... What on earth did you do that for?
So our college was the first college to publish details about pass rates for people from all ethnic backgrounds and whether you were part-time or gender. So we published all this data about our exam. And what it showed was that there was a differential attainment for people who come from overseas. So anybody who trained overseas had a lower pass rate of our exams than if you trained in the UK, irrespective of which part of the world you came from. If you were female, you had a higher chance of passing compared to male, irrespective of whatever you did. Yeah, absolutely. However, these results are mirrored in all professional exams all around the world in all sorts of professions. This isn't just medicine, but we just happened to be the first to publish it. So
did you discover why?
Yeah, well, it's very complicated why. I mean, there are some things that we know, and it's not that the exam is unfair. The most important thing, and judicial review confirmed that the exam is not prejudiced against anybody.
You were taken all the way.
We were taken all the way, and we were exonerated, completely exonerated. But it did set a very interesting tone for the whole of the medical profession, for the GMC and for all other medical royal colleges. So now all colleges publish the data, which is remarkably similar. But what it did do is it made us think very carefully about the needs of doctors coming to the UK from overseas. And it's not just about language. Language, you can test for language. It's about culture and that subtle nuance of language, which is much harder to teach and to learn. We know that English is a complicated language, but it's the subtleties, it's the regional variation. It's
spending
the
a penny.
Indeed, spending a penny. And I mean, I can think of having background in gynae, I've got 20 euphemisms for parts of the female body, you know. So not
so do most men, actually.
There may even be some overlap. So it's all that stuff. But also recognising that some people, we can tell when people go through training, when they go through the assessment criteria to become a doctor, to become a GP, we know that some people who are at the lower end of getting through in the first place are going to find it harder to qualify at the other end. So what we do now is we recognise that and try and give them more support earlier in their career. So try and target people who might struggle later. It's a complicated world. It's always evolving. There's lots of research going on. There are more answers coming out. But it is not simple discrimination. Absolutely not that. Wouldn't help anybody. Why would we do that?
Well, we need the doctors, don't we? What's the college's position on Brexit? You've got a document coming out tomorrow, haven't you?
We have. So
your Rule the World document.
Yay! So midnight tonight we will be releasing our manifesto, 6 steps to save the NHS.
Really?
Steps. Yeah, absolutely.
It's
Only
48
6.
hours.
Only 6 steps. No, but it's basically our way of laying down.
Can you remember what the 6 steps are?
Yeah, I was wishing I had my crib with me now. But the 6 are basically deliver in full.
It's got to be money,
people,
and doctors.
People, yeah. Well, that's the basis of it. But there are some key things. Delivering the promises of the GP forward view that we've got. In England, we've got
let's
just
that's
just the first one.
Well, let's just talk about that for a minute, because the forward view is finished now. Because the 5-year forward view is supposed to finish in 2020, which is coterminous with the election, the Treasury funding cycle, and Simon has already had a battle with number 10 over the money and all the rest of it. Now we're going from where we are to another 3 years tacked on the end. So, I mean, what do you think he'll do? Do you think we'll have the son of 5-year forward view, or the
5-year forward view plus? Or?
5+2 forward view.
So have you factored that in your document?
Yeah, so in our document we've stuck to the time. So
You stuck to the timeline of what?
So after the 5-year forward view, we have the GP forward view that was published just over a year ago. So we're 1 year into that one, and we are calling for them to stick with the commitment to deliver by 2020 on GPs and money. So we're sticking with the original deadline because the plan is in place. We've got the deliverables, and let's face it, a huge amount of effort's gone into a really big plan. If you've got the same government and the same things, we haven't fixed anything yet. We're only on the first few steps of fixing where we are.
Yeah, but
we
if
have to deliver in what we've got.
I mean,
if you believe
let's,
in the plan.
let's look at the two things. There's money and there's staffing issues,
Yeah.
workforce issues. If you look at the money, the economy is growing at around 2%.
Yeah.
And that does not mean there's going to be a shed load more money. In fact, if anything, regardless of what you think about Brexit, where you think we should come or stay or okey cokey in and out or whatever, it's going to have an impact on the economy.
It is.
You know, however much of an enthusiast you might be for Brexit or whatever, it will have an impact, and it's already starting to have an impact. So the economy, in my opinion, is at best likely to stall. There will be bits of it that might do a bit better, but by and large, I think it's likely to stall. I mean, we've seen Kraft today close a factory up in Newcastle. There's 800 jobs gone. They're moving it to Poland. I mean, okay, you say it's chocolate that they're making. Chocolate's not important, and maybe it isn't, but the jobs
Quite
are.
important to most of us.
But the jobs are important. So, I mean, my point is that with the best will in the world, I don't see there's going to be a huge amount more money. I mean, a lot of people are saying the election is a good opportunity to recalibrate the funding. I'm not so sure.
Well, I think we've got to be realistic about funding in the medium to long term. You're right, we're not going to be awash with money. Whatever happens, it's going to be difficult. And I don't think there's too many people out there who assume there is going to be a lot more money. I do think the country needs to have a serious conversation with itself about priorities and what we spend it on. You know, if we're spending significantly less of our GDP on health and social care than other countries are, then we need to ask ourselves.
We're 6.3%. The European average is around 8%.
So we should be having a really serious conversation with the country.
With the House of Lords have said that, haven't they, in their sustainability report. I mean, everybody's saying the same thing. We need to have a conversation. Well, but how?
Well, you've got an opportunity. If you have got a new government coming in for 5 years, they could be bold, they could be brave and make difficult decisions.
Would you?
Of course I would.
Well, I wouldn't, because I would be focusing entirely every minute of the day on Brexit.
No, you can't. We can't be distracted by Brexit.
Well, I think
because it's one important job, but right, the world's going to go on. People are going to need healthcare throughout. And if we're fully distracted by Brexit, then the rest of things are going to suffer, and that would be so foolish for everybody.
I think the government have taken the position now, I mean, you know, they cut the Home Office budget and crime went down, irritatingly. They cut the education budget and education attainment went up, rather irritatingly, and they cut our budget and we're in a real mess. And I think the Treasury is saying, look, the NHS improvement in performance swings between about 0.8% to 1.2% is the best it's ever been in terms of improvement and efficiency gains and all the rest of it. It's not enough. Simon's trying to get to 3.3 to 4% improvement by 2020. Oh, really? How?
Well, especially so much of it is, I think, as you said in one of your blogs, about you're on salaries.
I never
you're on
realised you read
spend.
my
I do read occasionally. I'm sneaky. I don't admit to it very often.
Everybody says that.
Sometimes they're really good.
Yeah.
But it is that thing about, you know, when you're spending on workforce, you haven't got much that you can work with. There isn't very much that you can make efficiency savings on, and that's the hardest thing. You know, as a former treasurer, I understand what you can cut and what you can't cut.
Yeah.
And actually, if you need a workforce to do a job, you can't change that. That's a baseline.
Well, it is interesting because our workforce is one of the most unchangeable workforces, isn't it? If you take like making cars, I think I'm right in saying that the workforce to make a car 20 years ago, it took 8 people to make a car, now it takes 3 or something. I mean, the figures aren't right, but the scale is. That's because a lot of the work can be done by artificial intelligence, robots and all that kind of stuff. But we are it's such an intimate service that whilst there are elements of diagnosis, I suppose, that could be mechanised and that sort of thing,
in fact, you know, it takes a nurse to do a nurse's job. It takes a doctor to do a doctor's
Yeah.
job. So I don't see how. I mean, we can make doctors more efficient. We can use more innovative technologies to record stuff.
Yeah,
We can
better
get
data.
tests going through quicker, and there's a lot of stuff we can do. In fact, funny enough, in my e-letter tomorrow, I'm writing about this tomorrow. There's a lot of stuff we can do, but we don't make it easy for people to sell to the NHS, and that's a real shame because we miss out. And the other thing is that the gains are really marginal, because you know, you've got 70% of your costs are in people. That's 30% left broadly. If you want to try and save 5% of the budget, it's not 5% of the 30% that's left. I don't know how you do it.
Yeah, exactly. It's incredibly hard and it's unrealistic, and that's why we have to have the conversation about the bottom line.
But
with what
who
we've
do we
got-
have the conversation with?
Government.
On
It's
be-
Treasury level. This isn't, you know, this isn't
Well,
something.
what are the Treasury going to say? We're worried about Brexit. We're going to put away as much money as we can in case the economy goes down the pan and we need benefits and all the rest of it. We're not going to spend any more money on healthcare. Get over it.
This is where the Royal Colleges, you know, those Royal Colleges being a waste of space. This is where we can speak and have those difficult conversations and challenge. But also there's loads of other organisations, and do you know the biggest resource we've got? The entire population. Every person in this country who needs healthcare at some point, whose lives are touched by healthcare, has a voice and can have a voice. And we need to, you know, that popular support. We need
Well,
people to be saying, speak to your
that's
MPs.
called an election, and we know the outcome. What? Look, God help us. Okay, so that's your first. I don't think much of your first point, right? What's your second point?
Well, we said about, so they're delivering on the money, deliver on the people. So there's promises to have a lot more allied healthcare
You've got more.
professionals.
We've got more GPs than we've ever had in the NHS. We're
We've
awash
got a
with
big enough
GPs.
population. We're not. We're
Goodness
desperately
sake, you
short
can't
of the
move
boy.
for GPs.
I thought you couldn't come and you're a bit short of the male ones in your practice.
You listen, I don't have to be cohesive.
I don't know. Okay, fine. Apparently I do.
You
so.
do.
So, workforce. And actually, there are things about letting doctors come into the country. You know, we're talking about Brexit a lot. We need to support our European and overseas
They're going
clinicians.
home.
Exactly, and we don't want them going home. We need to make them feel loved, nurtured. We want to enable them
It's
to
too
stay.
late.
We should be putting GPs on the shortage speciality list because we are so short of doctors.
Well, I think
that's a ridiculous thing.
likely to go, isn't it? I mean, if
What, the
if-
shortage list?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I would have thought that whole migration thing, or immigration thing, well, migration thing, will really have to be recalibrated. I mean, it's pretty sure, I just want to get your reactions, I mean, I'm pretty sure that there will be some kind of a points or scoring system, so some people with some occupations will, you know, the Australian scheme is not as great as they say it is, but broadly speaking, there will be some priorities that we will want as a nation. So I want engineers or lollipop ladies or doctors and nurses and that. So there will be a way of prioritising who comes in. So that will, it will carry on. So whatever Mrs May is saying now about not letting people in and all the rest of it, we're going to have to sort it out. I mean, we're going to go through a difficult 2 years.
We don't have enough healthcare professionals in this country
No.
to fill the need. We are reliant on overseas.
But
now.
no
There's a whole
one,
moral question.
but no
there.
one else does. You see, that's the interesting thing. There is not a European country that has a surfeit of clinicians. There is in the Far East where they train more nurses than they need with the intention of their going overseas, but not in Europe.
But actually, around the world, there are a lot of people where there are doctors who would like to come to the
Oh, that's a
UK, get
different thing.
experience. And
So
actually,
we've
that
got-
will get easier.
yeah, we've got to
That'll
make it easy for them.
We need to, absolutely we
Yes.
do. And so we're calling for this. Let's put general practice on the shortage speciality list now for all, for anywhere around the world. Obviously, when people come
And
in, we then
practice
have
nurses?
to represent. Well, I'd like practice nurses too. I think nurses are on the shortage list.
Yeah, they are,
Yeah.
but I don't know if they're specialists in that way. Okay, well that's
But we need to then train
well,
them
I'd,
when they come
I'd vote for your second
half
point.
that,
What's your
okay.
third point?
So, third point, that's three so far. But anyway, the next point, whatever I was counting.
Yes, this is the treasurer, ex-treasurer. Can't count. Yes, right, go on.
So the next thing is, I'm just thinking frantically what they are in order.
Well, you've got your press
yeah, I've got the
apparatchik
copy.
here.
I've got the copy of it behind me.
No, your apparatchik will tell you. He's just going. He's just going to Google it, and you'll find out.
It's not on the internet yet. It's not released till midnight.
Oh, right, okay.
But no. So workforce, workload, get the EU doctors sort of extending GP training. Now this one seems like a bit of an anathema at the moment. But general practice is really complicated. We are expert medical generalists. We are consultants in community medicine. We have the largest curriculum of any speciality by definition because it's a bit of everything. And yet we expect these doctors to get through their training in 3 years, and then we throw them out after so many attempts if they don't get through it in a crammed, condensed time. We know that if you give people a bit longer, they
so
come
they're
out
going to
more
keep going till
confident.
they pass.
No.
It's like a Boy Scout badge.
This is just extending it by 1 year. This is extending the core training from 3 to 4 years, with that whole extra year being based in general practice, consolidating what they're learning, doing extra training, particularly things like mental health, extra work probably spent focusing on children's health, gaining their confidence at that complexity and that richness of general practice. The academic case was made in 2008. In 2012, all the education bodies in the 4 nations agreed this was the right thing to do, and then something called Shape of Training came in and kicked it into the long grass. And actually, we've got doctors coming out who are struggling because they are overwhelmed by the intensity of the workload they're facing, because the world has gone a bit crazy. So to protect our doctors and to protect patients for the future, to get the best doctors in society, we want to extend training.
I'm not sure it does protect patients. You end up with doctors who have umpteen goes at passing.
No, there's a cap on the number of times you can sit the exam. But what you do is you try and get people to sit the exam when they're ready for it, not because they've got an artificial time limit in which they've got to cram in the attempts. So there is a lot of sense in it. And I mean, we heard from government throwing back, it'll cost more money. Of course it doesn't cost more money. You just have 1 year longer in a supervised environment when actually you're paid less than in a qualified environment. So the educators' budget will go up a little, and the employers' budget will go down a little. And actually,
so Health Education England will...
They would need a bit more money, and it would have to come off the core NHS England.
That'll be popular, right? What's the next one?
It may not be popular, but it's important.
Yeah.
It's really important.
What's the next one?
What's the next one? I'm conscious we've muddled them all up a little bit. Indemnity. GP indemnity, not an exciting, sexy topic for other people, but actually the insurance costs are phenomenal.
I'll let you into a little secret. There's an expert on indemnity in the audience.
I was aware there was somebody here from one of the 3 large defence organisations.
Yes, other defence.
We are working with the college.
We are working.
Other defence organisations
are available, yeah.
and a lucky rabbit's foot as well. Well, look, let's face it. It's the lawyers, isn't it? It's the no-win, no-fee lawyers that are busting the system. I mean, I'm torn because on the one hand, I think that if someone has been damaged by the health service, they should be entitled to go to court and all the rest of it, and money should not preclude them from doing it. So the no-win, no-fee with the insurance basis is no bad thing, but on the other hand, it has turned itself into a rip-off. What about dumping the whole thing and doing the no-fault thing, like in is it New Zealand, isn't it?
Yeah, some places that will have it. There are pros and cons of all these things. I mean, first of all, I would just look at the indemnity costs in England and Wales compared to Scotland. So GPs in Scotland pay 1/3 of what we do in doctors in England pay, because the different legal system.
They've got a different legal system.
But I mean,
you're not going to change that, are you?
Well, I'm sure there are lessons that we could learn from it. But
do you really think, given the relationship,
I aspire to great change from it?
Oh yes, Mrs. May will love that. Yeah, let's adopt this Scottish legal system.
We didn't put that one in there.
Eh?
We didn't put that in the manifesto.
Okay.
No, I'm not planning on rewriting the legal system. It's not my area of expertise. But actually, changing the system. So hospitals have a more of a crown indemnity-based system. So individual doctors don't bear the great brunt of their indemnity. It's a hospital level indemnity.
Well, the taxpayer does, doesn't it?
Yes, it costs society.
The trusts make a reserve up to whatever it is, and then the Treasury pay out if they get really caught, and then the hospitals have to pay it back through their external financing limits. So, and it's the same with the GPs really, because we pay the GPs contract, and they pay their indemnity. Is there a case for? Is there
stopping doing it? The problem
is there a case for including GPs in the broader indemnity? Is that what you're saying?
So there is a case for doing that. There are pros and cons. The problem is the insurance at the end of your professional life. The hospitals will be expected to continue the cover, but as a GP, if you go for an insurance-based scheme in the community, it's the run-off insurance. It's once you retire, it's what happens in the next 20 years. The patient you saw 20 years previously, it's that, and that's the difficulty. So there's a lot of, I'm oversimplifying a horribly complex legal thing, but we're having conversations. Conversations are happening, which is good.
What about when we're moving towards accountable care organisations now, and trusts can acquire GP practices? So if you've got a salaried GP working for you ostensibly in primary care, but actually as part of the trust's global responsibilities, who carries the indemnity?
Well, indeed. You tell me. I mean, that's the sort of stuff that needs to be worked out. This is exactly the
Depends
stuff.
whether there's still a
Depends.
So the answer is no, but we don't know.
We don't know.
If you're
It
watching
could
at
be-
home, send us
we
a
don't know.
text. Yeah.
It could be the employer, or
Yeah.
it might not. So, for example, I no longer do out-of-hours shifts. I used to do them. I used to find them a really rewarding, interesting part of my career. Variety, diversity, you know, seeing a whole different population. But actually, my indemnity costs for doing those sessions were so disproportionately expensive. We worked out that I was working for 9 to 10 months a year just to pay the excess of my indemnity. Well, do you know what? Giving up your Saturday mornings, not having time with family, actually, that's quite a hard thing to do for basically free of charge. And so I stopped. And there are that's repeated over and over and over. And there is talk about the system has some resilience. There are some people who could do more clinical sessions if only the indemnity didn't get in the way, because there are barriers, there are steps. If you hit the next threshold, you're not covered. It used to be, years before, that my indemnity for my out-of-hours work was covered by the out-of-hours provider. But then they changed, the system changed, that got taken away, suddenly not cost effective.
Well, they
And
tried
that's
to
a
take it
nonsense.
off the NHS balance sheet, didn't
Yeah.
they? Move it into the private sector,
So, yeah,
which is
complex and
which is
messy.
not has not gone well. Is there anything else in this miserable manifesto?
It's a
you
glorious
think
manifesto. It's a
really-
manifesto of positivity and hope, Roy. Hope. Hope for the future. Hope for patience.
Give up, abandon hope. All you enter here. Come
His
on,
side of
what-
the table, not my
What
side of
is
the table.
what is that? It.
So it's 6 steps, 6 points. Resource the service properly.
So it's the
People,
money, the people.
the infrastructure, the
Yeah.
training, the
Yeah.
overseas doctor, and the Brexit talk,
Yeah.
indemnity.
I can't wait to review this.
It's going to be fab. I'll give you a special copy tonight.
Oh,
Someone's
I
going to
should-
print it before
I
midnight.
should be reviewing this with a very interested eye. Really, that you look at me like that. I'm sure it'll be wonderful, but I mean, what do you like? Okay, let's be sensible. What's
Yeah.
going to happen?
Yeah.
Who are we dealing with? We're dealing with Norman Lamb
Yeah.
in the Lib Dems, who strikes me as a good-hearted, sensible bloke.
Very caring,
And,
committed.
yeah, and I think he would. Well, he's already said he wants more money for health.
Yeah, particularly mental health.
Yeah,
some of his
they
passions,
pinched
yeah.
my idea of moving the money into the national insurance,
Clearly a good idea.
health national insurance. A brilliant idea, I think.
Genius,
I came
yeah.
up with it 2 years ago, and it's been roundly stolen. So I think they might,
Sincerest form
they
of
might be,
flattery.
they might be worth a vote. If and then you've got Labour, John Ashworth, who sat where you're sitting, and he's a really interesting guy. I think anybody here for John Ashworth? Did you see? He was a good guy, wasn't he? We all like John Ashworth.
Good.
A very interesting family background.
All right.
Yeah, he won't mind me
Alright.
telling you this because we
Yeah.
filmed him saying his dad was an alcoholic
All right.
and he had a really difficult childhood.
Yeah.
And he spoke very movingly, I think,
Did he?
about mental health issues and so on.
Yeah.
And so I think he gets the health service. You know, he wants to do the health service, and he has trailed the idea again of moving the funding into something more identifiable and out of the reach of the Treasury. And I think Corbyn would be likely to say, I will put more money in health. And then we've got Jeremy Hunt, who has also sat there. And I mean, I know no in office Secretary of State is ever popular. Let's face
Indeed.
it.
Yeah.
But I thought he genuinely wanted to do the job. He had a row to get the job this time around.
So we're here.
Yeah, I think it's true. I think it's what he says is right, and I think he kind of gets it. But he lost his way really over the junior doctors' strike. But who wouldn't? It was such a mess, and it was a mendacious strike. I think it wasn't a strike about junior doctors. It was a political strike. And when the HSJ revealed all the emails to perpetuate the strike, I think that showed it up for what it was. But he's interested in safety, and
Very much so. Yeah.
and he's made a
Data.
real mess of 7-day working. But that's not entirely his fault, because I think Uncle Bruce egged him on there a bit, Bruce Keogh. But I think Miley Hunt tried to take it too far. So I mean, if you look at what we're dealing with, who was your best chance of your delivering your manifesto?
Well, you know I can't be part of political, right? Because we're in Herder, we're Royal Colleges, we're tied up with Charity Commission rules, so I can't be part
Are
of
you
political.
really?
Yeah,
Are the Royal Colleges
Yeah,
in Perth?
we are. Yeah, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, very much so. So I really can't.
What happens if you break it?
I have no idea. There's a nasty slap on the wrist.
Should we find
somebody
out?
has shouted me.
Let's find out. I don't think you bother with that. Let's find out.
Do you reckon?
I don't think you're
Oh,
in Perth.
we are.
No, I think you might be involuntary murder, but
Well, perhaps we're involuntary, but we're certainly
I don't think
independent.
the rules apply. I think it's a parliamentary
I think we
thing,
have to be very
parliamentary
careful.
convention, actually.
Well, we as the Academy and all the medical royal colleges are very careful about this, and certainly I've written to all my council members saying, remember, anything you say involving the council, you can't be seen to be party political. It's not helpful.
Okay, well, let me phrase the question another way.
That would be helpful.
Let's say if you were Bet 365,
Yeah.
what are the odds on your miserable manifesto being adopted by anyone?
I'd say it was a fantastic chance of being adopted because it's so sensible and pragmatic.
Yeah.
We're trying to make it easy for the parties. We're trying to make it easy for all the parties to see what matters. We've kept it very simple, we've kept it very high level, and we've got it out there early.
Well,
That's the
I'll
point.
tell you what is interesting. I mean, you've got your manifesto out ahead of the game. Well,
That's the
actually,
idea,
I
that's the
published
idea.
my manifesto
Oh, did you?
yesterday. Yeah, but you got your manifesto out ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Well, and well done for that, because I think that the Maymite took everybody by surprise, and no one's got anything other than
Do
ready.
you want to see the cover of it, right? I'm very pleased with the cover of
Would
it.
you want to flash it in front
Yeah,
of
I'll
it?
flash it the camera.
Get your no, just stay in front of the camera. Your apparatchik will get it. for you.
Handbag at the back there.
Yes, go through the handbag.
It's
Apparatchik.
behind there.
Time to earn your. What do you having a?
I
and
just
please,
stuck my handbag at the back.
please don't knock the Institute of Healthcare Management banner down. There it is. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay, let's have a look.
I'll,
There's not much in it. Not much to it, is
I
there?
told you
really?
we keep it high level, clear cut, straightforward.
It wasn't worth the trees, was it?
It certainly
Right,
was.
let's deliver the forward view. Right, well, we've done
did that one.
Okay, you
Yeah,
can't
yeah.
deliver that. It's out of date anyway now, so that's a waste.
We just refreshed
Increase
it,
the
right?
general practice workforce you're at by at least 5,000.
At least.
Oh, really?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And you want to lengthen training? Forget it. Safeguard the workforce
Lengthen
during
training
Brexit.
sector.
Well, they're going to be a bargaining chip for the Maymite, so you can
But we
forget
have
that.
to say it.
Grow the wider general practice team. I like that.
It's important.
That's
Allied
the
healthcare
most sensible
professionals,
thing
build the
you've
numbers.
said.
You didn't let me get a word in at the start. It's because that's committed in the GP forward view. It's in
Yeah.
there. An
They
extra
are
3,000
actually a
healthcare
very
professionals.
underused resource,
Yeah,
aren't they?
they're fantastic.
I like the idea of them prescribing as well.
Nurse prescribers or others prescribing.
Other prescribing, radiologists prescribing,
Yeah.
OTs.
Pharmacists.
I mean, anybody that hands-on
Anybody who's
patients.
properly trained
Yeah.
and it's appropriate to do so.
With the
We're
college,
looking at-
you support that.
Yes, we do, absolutely.
Yeah.
We're trying to work, widening that allied healthcare professional team.
De-
It's great.
develop a sustainable long-term solution to bringing down the rising costs of medical indemnity.
Indemnity,
Well, if you doctors stop buggering things up, it would be a lot cheaper. So there's nothing to do with that. And increase the length of GP training. You're having a laugh.
See, I did remember that.
You
So
did.
we're not publishing it till midnight.
You did well. I'm sorry, but if you've just been if you just been watching this at home, you can't read this because it's embargoed. Do your screenshot now, okay? And do your screenshot now, yes. But it is embargoed. No, well, thank you. Well done for getting it out. Anyway,
Thank you.
Let's talk about the Royal College, because I
Sure.
mean, there's no way really you could be the one day a week doctor, and pretend to be a GP and be the top
I'm
GP.
still a partner,
It's
right?
a
I'm
lot.
making decisions about my
You're
practice
having
all
a
the
lot.
time.
There
just
must
work
be
hard.
a lot of doctors who are much better qualified to take this job on.
Do you reckon?
Yes.
Then why didn't they vote
Look
for
at
me?
your. Well, that's interesting because it was a very low turnout, wasn't it?
No, right, it wasn't. It was almost 100% turnout for the chair of the college.
Yeah, it's
Because
very-
only the council
I
votes.
seem to read that it was. Oh, it's only the council vote. Yeah. Which is the membership vote?
The membership is the president.
That's right.
And
Low
some
turnout.
members.
Yeah.
It was last time. In fact, before coming here today, I did a bit of a promotional video for our members to try and encourage people to vote
Yes.
in the next level of
Yeah,
election.
so
because
you
it is important
so
to
you
get
were a
people
shoe
voting.
in for the fit up.
No, right, it wasn't. There were 4 candidates standing, and it was a good fair fight. A good,
Yeah.
clean, fair
Good,
fight.
clean, fair fight. Well, actually, I'm pleased to see you elected, to be honest with you, because we could do without another grey-haired old geezer doing the job. I must say that. Maureen was good, wasn't she?
Maureen was great, as was
Yeah.
Claire before her. So,
Yeah.
in fact, there were comments that 3 women in a row, but
Yes.
nobody commented there'd been 14 chaps in a row prior to that. So.
Yeah, we won't go there because I've already got into trouble about a grumpy old geezer. I can't find a GP that's a grumpy old geezer. That's right.
It's getting harder to find a GP all the time,
Yeah,
right?
I'm going to set up the Society for Grumpy Old Geezers.
Yeah.
But what is the future? I mean, you're standing on the sidelines. When you first came in, you were going to fight for this and do that. It sounded like student politics for me. I mean, where's the influence really gone?
Do you mean for colleges generally and me?
I think so.
So, the
There was a time when politicians would listen. They don't now, do they?
I think they do, right. I think
Really?
health is a really big issue because it affects everybody, and the public and the voters care about health. So actually health is important, and mobilising that, getting the patient voice out there is important. We recognise that. We've got, our campaign that put patient first back general practice was in association with the National Association of Patient Participation Groups. We've got patient participation in the college and the Academy of Medical Royal Colleges. As the Royal College of GPs, scientific knowledge applied with compassion, that's our motto, or cum scientia caritas. And actually, I think that's a phenomenal motto. It's something about keeping the patient at the heart of what we do. It's reminding why we became doctors or healthcare professionals.
Have you got any patients on your council?
On our council, yes, we have. Yeah, we do. Yeah.
How do you get to do that then?
Well, we advertise nationally for members of our patient participation group because we've got a big committee.
I must
We've got
look out
regional
for
reps.
that.
Do
Yeah.
Rabina Shah is the chair of our patient participation group at the moment. But we've got ones in each devolved nation, and we've got in fact we've just appointed 6 new people and looking forward to meeting them before too long.
So what do you want to achieve then? Now you're in the chair. How long are you in the chair for?
3 years.
3 years. I mean, I suppose really you've been slightly sideswiped by the election.
Yeah, invigorated, I like to think of it.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a bit of a side swipe last week.
I find it very invigorating, yeah. Another election.
So no, I didn't expect to have a general election during my term of office. I thought I was all about delivery on GP Forward View, recruiting, retaining, returning people, getting more people into the profession, looking at the interface, new ways of working. I think we have to evolve to survive in general practice. We've got to be realistic.
That's another area I'd like to really explore with you, and that is the role of the technology stuff.
Okay, yeah.
Because, I'm torn really, because if I was a doctor, I probably would have been trained to use my observation and sight and sound, and it's more than where you sit someone in front of you. It's a kind of personal, intimate thing. If someone comes in and says, I've got maggots in my scrotum,
very personal.
Yeah. Or a lot of doctors talk about the door handle, don't they? And by the way, doctor, yeah. So I get the intimacy of that, and I do understand the risks that there are to careers if you get things wrong, and the worst of it. But if you look at, say, diabetes, for example, we've got 3.5 million people with diabetes in this country. It's going to be 5 million by 2000 and soon, whatever it is.
25 or whatever. 30.
And there's no way you're going to be able to deal with all that. We have got to start thinking about the use of technology. Yeah. And so if you start with the basics, quite a lot of the stuff that you can do with a doctor, you could do with FaceTime. But I understand the reluctance of doctors who want to do that for FaceTime. But let's face it, we've got Babylon, which is the new app that we've got GoDoc, I think.
Quite a few of them.
There's a lot of them, and they are popular. They are. If you've got a young family and you want a bit of reassurance or whatever, palaver about getting an appointment. I think that unless GPs understand what is happening here, they're going to be like the gas lamp. They're going to be overtaken by apps and a doc I can get hold of now.
Okay, so there's quite a lot of stuff in here. Let's disentangle it a bit. So we've got technology, using more technology, fantastic. In fact, in general, GPs have been early adopters of technology. The first people to have computers in the NHS, the first to prescribe, the first to have mobile phones, because actually a gadget that makes life easier makes sense and people will do it. And as small independent businesses, actually you have got the opportunity to innovate. If you've got the headspace and you can see a need, use it. So I think technology and GPs generally great, they love it. However, so there's that bit of it, and I think it doesn't take a lot for GPs to embrace new tech. I love the fact that in my practice we handle virtually no paper at all. The nonsense that stuff arrives in on paper, then we scan it so I don't have to handle paper, because the only way to communicate with the 3 different hospitals that we work with, all are on different systems and none of them talk to each other. Anyway, we can improve, we really can improve, and with a fairly modest investment in IT infrastructure, we could do so much better in the NHS. But what you're talking about, remote consulting, so there's some great stuff with remote consulting and there's some risky stuff with remote consulting. Great stuff, remote and rural areas providing urgent access to services, and when you're under-doctored and people need something, does this rash look serious, doctor? You can do some of that stuff. If it's simple, single condition stuff, and ideally if people have got access to the digital electronic record. But the human condition is generally much more complicated than that.
Yeah, well, look, but hang on, because we're just going to kind of throw this all away. There's no silver bullet with this. I get,
Yeah, yeah.
but there is silver buckshot. So there'll be.
That's metaphor.
There'll be. I mean, when my mum was alive, she was devoted to her GP.
Good.
And that was that. Me, I don't give a stuff. I mean, I get up and go to work in the morning, and my GP surgery is closed. I come home in the evening, GP surgery is closed. Saturdays it's there for an emergency, whatever that is. And then Sunday I go to church, sprinkle myself with holy water, pray for a cure, because they're closed. So I never see primary care open. It's a complete waste of money as far as I'm concerned. I've never seen the lights on. I told you the last time I saw my GP was in a restaurant in Albufeira.
Interesting you recognised him.
Yeah, I did, yeah. And the whole thing was, the whole thing for me, primary care is a complete waste of money. What I want is primary care on Waterloo Station, open at 7 o'clock in the morning.
So, Roy, if you want to pay to use Babylon or one of these other apps, go for it. It may suit your needs completely well. Because if genuinely you suddenly wake up one morning with a rash and you think, ooh, what is that? I want that checked. You can do that, and that's fine.
But would you
However,
are you content to see that? Because when we get to the point where we're no longer prepared to syndicate our risks of injury and accident and illness and disease and all the rest of it, because I say, oh bugger it, I'm going to buy Babylon, and then I'm going to start saying, well, why am I paying all these bloody taxes for the NHS? I never use it.
Well,
Do you seriously want that fracture?
Okay. Let's come back to NHS versus pro, because again we're conflating
No,
quite a lot
it's
of things.
not that, is
well,
it?
it is. Well, no. Let's do
It's
let's do the
technology
private.
versus not technology.
No, because we want this stuff. So, there are practices already that offer Skype consultations with patients. Out of hours care that uses Skype as a tool. It's just one of an example.
But it's
so
rare.
It's rare, but it's expanding. You've got to start somewhere. These big tech companies are going down the private model because that's the only way of financing it. The NHS could choose to buy these services if they are good.
They have.
And once
Do you know they have in Jersey?
I've heard there are pilots going
No,
on.
in Jersey, they've given everybody Babylon. They've
Great,
given that
fine.
because
And it'll be a great big experiment, and I sincerely hope somebody with a careful, critical eye is watching to make sure what the health outcomes are.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
it won't.
with
Look, it won't be as good. We know that, right? It won't be as good.
Yeah.
But
it might help
but Jim,
shore up the service.
when
that's
Jim
fallen
Mackey, when Jim Mackey came, the Jim
I
Reaper
know.
as we call him,
Yeah,
when
as we
he
call
sat
it.
where you're sitting, I mean, he talked about good enough is good enough. And
Do you want good enough care for your family?
he said it with regret. I mean, we're not saying good enough is good enough. We're saying that good enough is going to have to be good enough, because I don't see, I mean, apart from this wonderful 6 steps for general practice, I'm going to show you again, screenshot, too late. Apart from, I mean, look, I can't see with it, and I'm not being disrespectful, I can't see that being achieved. I mean, some of it will be achieved, but I don't. Bits of it will be, but I don't think it will be. And I can't see us resolving the crisis that there is in general practice anytime soon, without lifting some of the stuff off of the backs of the GPs. For example, we talked about diabetes, didn't we? I mean, you could use technology to maintain, but hang on, just let me finish my. You could use technology to maintain an otherwise well diabetics. But if I'm going to send my data in every day to you, and somebody's got to sit there and review it every day, that doesn't help. If we were to invest in regional call centres, where the algorithm is built over a much bigger area, maybe 300,000 patients or more, 500,000 maybe, we could do COPD, we could do, because the baby boomers are coming through. A lot of people like me, net savvy, understand how it works, not going to be buggered about.
Plenty of 80-year-olds who are net savvy.
Exactly. So, we all, there's a different group of people coming through, and one wonders really if the investment shouldn't be, I mean, it would have to be private investment, I suppose, to invest in the call centres. So you said, you said, if you say, Roy, you're diabetic. Sorry, you're diabetic, but it's your diabetes. You've got to look after it. We're not going to do it. Here's a prescription. You go home and you do it on your computer. You log in with the call centre, send your stuff in, and then they monitor you. And if something happens, they ring you up. And it takes me out of your waiting room.
the biggest problem with that is that people the vast majority of people who haven't got diabetes have got something else too. And if you break it into silos, so you just have a diabetes service like that, it might be a fantastic diabetes service, but what about the high blood pressure? What about the depression? What about the chronic pain problems? What about their social housing and all the other stuff?
But what about
and
the ones that don't?
Well, for some that don't, it might be great, but actually, you don't even need many people in the call centre. Most of it can be done with an app. If you're prepared to do your finger pick readings and send them in, then actually an app can really help with that.
Yes.
And then have it uploaded to your central NHS record. You don't need to set up a whole new infrastructure for that. I mean, I like the idea of using technology better. I like the idea of using pathways and algorithms for where we can. The problem is the majority of people with chronic health conditions have several of them, and they go up with age. You've seen all the graphs, I don't need to tell you this. Multimorbidity, polypharmacy, all grows up with age. Throw in deprivation into the question as well, and you're adding another complexity.
I mean, if you're saying that is the condition of the market, if we look at it as a business proposition, if that's what the market is, then we're never going to resolve it, because we won't resolve it, Helen, with 5,000 more GPs.
Okay, 5,000 GPs is one step. It's only one small part of it. I agree, 5,000, that's not enough. Probably should be 10 if you wanted to stick with the traditional model. But we're talking about evolving the whole model. General practice is evolving all the time.
Doesn't say that in here.
I was trying to keep it simple, though. What's pragmatic for the government? We don't want to confuse people.
No,
but the reality
dealing
is...
with politicians.
The reality is the general practice, like all other parts of the NHS, has to evolve. We've got to look at new ways of working, innovation in the way we practice. We're talking about working at scale, scaling up, working together in more professional ways.
Do you think the federations will resolve that?
No, federations were one way of bringing people together. But the problem is, what is a federation? I've seen at least 15 different models of what a federation is.
Well, does it matter? It's just a way that people can work together.
Working together
you can
helps.
cut your back office costs, you can get your appointments sorted out, you can have one specialism in one GP practice and not in another. I mean, it does seem to me...
Yeah, that's working at scale, which, yes, is an important part moving forward. But it's not going to
fit
anybody
NAPC home,
primary care home is one really good model, which talks about working at 30 to 50,000 patients, and that has got traction all over the place. There are other pillars of the primary care home, which
James Kingsland sat in that seat and told us all about it one night.
Good, and it's interesting, and it works in some places, and there are 15 practices that are doing it, and of those 15, 5 are really flying with it, 5 are getting there, and 5 are struggling with it. It is one model that's under investigation.
Is that a problem, that there's too many models?
Well, this is the thing about local need. I mean, if you don't
it comes to the 5-year full review, because Simon said, look, I'm not here to impose anything.
Absolutely.
Go and sort yourselves out. I don't want 1,000 flowers to bloom, he said. Yes, but he said I didn't want that. And he had the Vanguard models. Which, as far as I can see, I mean, Sam Jones came and talked to us one night. I mean, the Vanguards have been a success, as far as I can see.
They've been a success, but they've been really expensive. So the Vanguards have reached about 9% of the population, cost a lot of money, done some brilliant stuff. I mean, really exciting, buzzy stuff, and shining a light. When you think you haven't got hope, look at what some of the Vanguards have done. But they've done it with a shed load of money, which has bought headspace for people to do creative things.
Yeah, but the followers, Vanguard 2, the Ford Triumph, the Triumphs, not the Vanguards, they'll do it easier, won't they? They won't need as much money.
They won't need as much money, but they will still need money and headspace. And that's what's difficult, is when you try and roll things out and say, right, everyone can do it without any money and without any headspace. That's where it falls down. So, you've got, I talk about the workforce and the NHS as being a spectrum where you've got the top 10% with a passionate enthusiast who will go for it, either through necessity or through genuine passion and fire, will push forward. And they're the ones who grab the Vanguard model and run with it. You've got the 10% or so down the bottom end who've got the ostriches with their heads in the sand, who are they're not going to change until they absolutely have to, till they fall over. But the massive majority in the middle are scared, they're struggling, they're finding it hard to recruit, they don't know what the future holds, and they need hope right now. They need hope, and they need guidance, and they need inspiration, they need models that they can say, actually, that would work, I could do that, and they need a bit of help to get there. But they do need resource to do it, and they need people to do it, and they need headspace.
That's a very interesting thing to say. We're coming up to the end of our time. Have we got any questions on Periscope, John?
There was some questioning about the role of GPs in hospitals with the move to
vertical integration.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just,
are we talking about putting GPs in A&E?
Yes.
Yeah. There's 35 million quid announced today, which is capital, not revenue. What are we supposed to do with 35 million quid in A&Es? You build another Kazi or buy a desk for a GP? I don't get that. Do you know?
No, I don't.
No, I don't. I
It
haven't got a
hasn't been
clue.
tested with us at all.
I mean, GPs in A&E is a good idea.
It's an interesting idea, and if we had the workforce, there's some places that make it work well. When I was a junior doctor, when I was working in A&E, we used to go off for our training afternoon, and they'd bring some local GPs in, and the consultants always said the department ran beautifully when the local GPs ran it. But at the end of the day, the GPs were consultants in generalism. They were better at handling risk than us as junior doctors were. So if you put GPs into A&E, if you asked every A&E department, would you like another consultant? Of course they'd say yes. What they're asking for is a consultant who happens to be a GP. And it'll help, but it's going to deplete the community workforce. And so what are you going to do? If you haven't got enough clinicians, then you need to balance it out. There are places where GPs in A&E is a great idea. Actually, I'm more concerned about getting the GPs in the communities with the patients that they're serving to save them, save patients going to the wrong place. You know, we're only suggesting we put them there because some patients wander into A&E because they say they can't get appointments in their community.
That's really interesting you should say that, because I was in, a couple of months ago, I was in the best hospital in the world, which is Frimley Park.
Oh, indeed.
Fabulous Frimley Park. And I was in there visiting someone, and I happened to go through A&E. Now, it was 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
It was standing room only. And I would think the average age was from about 16 in football kit,
loads of them,
through to about mid-50s.
Sprained knees and ankles from Sunday sport.
Mid-50s, you know.
And
I thought, you know what, I'd like to ask everybody here, why are you here?
But actually, the Sunday afternoon phenomena, we know there's loads of people play sport at the weekend, and so you get the kids with injuries brought in because they've done it on Saturday, or they've woken up on Sunday and it's in pain, and we're going out for Sunday lunch if you're still hurting, I'll take you on Sunday afternoon. There is a peak in that age group going in there. But actually, you don't need a GP surgery for those either. What you need are advanced nurse practitioners in A&Es with a fast throughput and a good triage system. Do they need x-ray? Do they not? Do they need strapping? Do they need crutches? Out. They're actually relatively quick throughput. What we struggle with are the patients who shouldn't be in A&E because they've got complex medical problems that should be better served by a better setup in a community.
Does that mean a better out-of-hours service?
Yeah, a better supported out-of-hours. So the out-of-hours GP service, out-of-hours 111, the whole service resourced with more clinicians, but not just doctors. I'm talking about nurses as
Paramedics
well.
do very well.
Paramedics are great in emergency situations. I mean, there are some good pilots
Well,
of
there's
paramedics
working in GP practices.
There are, and that's very exciting. We're watching that one with interest. You know I'm keen on allied healthcare professionals working as part of that primary care team. It is a team, and there would be different things. So, you know, when I think about the visit request that came to my surgery yesterday, you know, there's an alcoholic lying on the floor. He doesn't need a GP. He needs a paramedic. There's an old lady with a bad chest. Well, of course, a cushion indeed, and possibly a bucket. But you know, the old lady with a bad chest. It could be a GP. A nurse practitioner could probably do that just as well. Probably doesn't need a paramedic. She didn't sound vision was an issue. You know, paramedics are great with it. Do they need to scoop and run, or can they fix this at home? So you know, it's different people for different things, and I think it's keeping that perspective and recognising it's not simple. It's never going to be simple. Things like this, we make them simple to make them have impact. But it is complicated. Of course, it's complicated. If it was easy, everyone would be doing it. Everyone would be doing it.
Has anybody got anything they'd like to say? Any questions they'd like to ask? Well, I'm open to suggestions. Yes, Angus.
Can you tell us where you are on social prescribing?
Yeah, social prescribing.
It's a complete waste of money, isn't it?
Well, social prescribing is interesting, and it has a lot of intuitive appeal.
Well, who did that? There was a report, was it? Who said it?
Yeah.
I read
But
somebody said it's a waste of
there's a
money.
There is a
We had Sam Etherington, I must
of
tell you, Sam Etherington sat there and engaged us all one night with social prescribing. And if you ever go to Sam Etherington's practice, you know, it's a garden centre with a coffee shop, and somewhere in it there's a GP surgery.
Patients love it.
I know,
Doctors like
I think it was
looking at it
great,
as well, So no, social prescribing it's not evidence backing, but there isn't much hard evidence, certainly not in terms of patient outcomes yet. So we're looking for that. I'm very interested in looking for it. There's a lot of intuitive appeal, and it's a great way of engaging people with the practice. So I've got a big mission and agenda to get charities working together with healthcare better, so get that third sector in, and this is a huge role they can play. Engage your patient participation in activating. There is feel-good stuff that make people feel better that perhaps isn't easy to count in terms of hard outcomes, but there is something there that feels right, and I'm sure there is right, We just haven't got the evidence yet.
Are you a bit too academic really about all this? You've got a strong academic background. I mean, does it really matter if there's not hard evaluation? There's fuzzy stuff, isn't there?
There's fuzzy stuff.
You know,
I've challenged the academic community, right, in terms of you need gold standard evidence for some things. You want to bring a new drug in, you really need to know if it's working, if it's safe. There is stuff where I've challenged the academic community about silver standard evidence, that actually it doesn't have to be, you know, however many degrees of freedom and whatever confidence limits. It needs to be good enough. So, for example, a new model of working, a new way of trying to do something, social prescribing, it's not going to do any harm. Therefore, what is the cost of doing it versus the cost of not doing it? Is it worth trying? And let's pilot it a bit longer. So you can be a bit more soft and fuzzy. But the NHS is full of stuff that really doesn't work.
Well, you would see, if I take you back to what you were saying about, I'll come to you in a second, what you were saying about diabetics, you know, you could end up with depression and a lot of, I mean, a lot of that would be about, you know, buy a dog or, you know, get out more.
Do you know, buying a dog works for a lot of people, increase your exercise, a lot of people love
but
and a bit of joy in your
I mean,
life.
that's a bit frivolous, you know, but I mean, the point I'm making is that the answer to that is probably in social prescribing as much as it is in an antidepressant.
This is what I meant about the intuitive appeal. It feels like it should work and it should help. So I want it to work. We're just not seeing a lot yet. So, sorry. Hi there.
How are you going to apply the lessons learned, or maybe not learned, from the STP process and the pilots of the ACS?
Well, it's going to be a really interesting time, and it's not for me to say because I won't be doing it. I'll just be there watching closely and reporting back on it. There are a lot of lessons to be learned in the STPT process, not least the unholy haste with which things got rushed through, the fact that they forgot about primary care in some areas, and in other areas they work on the basis that you don't need primary care, which is a little bit tricky. And most hospital chief execs, if you say to them, oh, by the way, we're going to shut down primary care in your area, do the math, and we reckon 48 hours and most hospitals would be on their knees, because we've set up a system which is weighted that way. So if you don't factor in primary care to your planning, so much for sustainability. It won't be sustainable if you don't transform primary care as well as secondary. So we're very clear about that. Get primary care on the journey with you as well as social care, because it's just as important. I talk about a three-legged stool, a tripod. I talked about a Welsh milking stool, but I was told that was old-fashioned, so I talk about a tripod now, which is apparently more socially acceptable. But actually, we're all integrated. You know, we're all interlinked, and so to do one without the other is naive.
What happened with STPs? I mean, I thought that it was a wonderful example, really. I mean, Simon said, well, it's pretty clear that we need a strategic overview of what's going to happen in the future to replace strategic health authorities. Go away, sort yourselves out, and work together, and then you end up with this bun fight of people who won't work together in so many places. Not all of them, but so many of them. You go, oh,
is it human nature? But what's interesting is it started like that, and then we've been watching, obviously very interested in some areas totally dysfunctional, in other areas actually they did really good stuff.
Yes,
people did talk, and I think, you know, I'm the glass half full person here, and actually I would like us to be looking at those who've done a really good job and trying to shine a light and say, let's spread this, let's share the good stuff. You know, now the spotlight is off the actual plans, and it's all about just doing something that works locally. And let's get people in. You know, we've put ambassadors, GP ambassadors, into all areas of the country to try and have the conversations and bring people together. And it's working. You know, just amongst general practice, we've got various factions and families. They're talking for the first time. I talk to GP surgeries about, you know, a new breed of general practice, a new collaborative mode of working with our colleagues and our neighbours in a way we didn't before. You know, historically, when I say to a room of GPs, do you remember the time when you didn't talk to the practice next door because 30 years ago the senior partner parked in his parking space, so we didn't talk? Those days need to move on. We need to professionalise and get over it.
Well, where I live, my local CCG is 97,000 people. You know, they're bigger bridge clubs.
Well, there's certainly bigger GP surgeries than that.
Yeah, it's just hopeless. Right, we've got a couple of questions. We'll do the indemnity guy last, because I think he's going to send us home in tears.
Oh, no, finish on joy, please.
Yes,
finish on joy.
Yes, sir, yeah.
So, hi, I'm Peter Gill. I'm a GP in Kent. It's more of a comment, really, which is that, Helen, I don't think you gave Roy a hard enough time when you were talking about the technology bit, about the human component of general practice, the requirement for the doctor or the A&P or whoever it is to actually eyeball the patient.
Well, I think I said that.
Diabetes model.
It's the essence of the patient.
Why it matters, to actually
well, I think I said that. I said I'm in two minds about it, didn't I? If you cast
you
your mind, I'm in two minds. I see it from the GP's point of view, sitting opposite. So I said all that. But what I also said was, are we getting to the point where, as delightful as that is, we may have to sacrifice some of it? For example, I mean, there was a time when you could register with a GP and you'd always see the same person. Now you register with the practice and you can see anybody. We've given that up. It's gone because we can't do it. And do we get to the point now where this is going to go because we can't do it?
Sure, but the influence, the human influence, is still enormous.
No one's denying that.
The most cost-effective intervention.
No one is denying that.
Is the doctor saying, telling the person to stop.
Pull yourself together, yeah.
So it's
we get that, but the point is, the point that I think we were discussing was we can't do that anymore.
Well, actually, I think we can. There are some fantastic pockets where they're managing to do it. They're triaging and streaming patients. So those who have got the acute, more straightforward stuff are being seen by other people, and the more complicated people are getting that continuity of care. They're being put into teams. So even in massive practices, let's say you're in the Dr. Helen team. So in Dr. Helen's team, there's Dr. Helen and Dr. Roy in the Dr. Helen's team, and you know that if you're in that team and you phone up and it's a complicated problem that you don't mind waiting to see one of them, you can see either Dr. Helen or Dr. Roy. They've got your record, they've got shared understanding of you, your family, your social context and your psychological, and it can be done. And we know that if we add to Dr. Helen and Dr. Roy, we add Nurse Jane and the practice pharmacist and all the rest of it, we can be a cluster of team.
Well, I do get that.
That helps, and patients trust. Yeah. They trust us better, we use less resource, and we get to the heart of the problem faster. So if we can do it, it is where we should aim to be.
But what I'm saying is, instead of saying, we're going to do this, we're in the territory of where we can do it, we will. It's slipping away. And I'm not saying I'm pleased about it slipping away, which is why I mentioned what the Jim Reaper told us about, good enough is good enough. And none of us want that. And again, I'm not, we pulled your leg about this, but it's and who's going to argue with any of that? But 5,000 more GPs ain't going to crack this. Not when the number of diabetics goes from 3.5 million to 5 million.
That's the standstill.
By 2021, we're not getting anywhere near solving this, and in doing the same things ain't going to crack it, in my view. There was a question there. Oh God, it's the indemnity.
Be nice.
I'm going to throw myself off the bar stool.
Nice.
It's not an indemnity question at all.
Right.
Helen, you're very supportive of AHPs, but
Yeah.
I'm quite interested. We're training a lot of physicians' assistants, or associates, whatever we call them at the moment.
Yes.
But the vast majority of them are going to work in secondary care, and I think the last GP survey of practice staff, there was about 8 in the country. And I just wonder why they're not attracted to primary care, either.
So
it's just protectionism, isn't it? Good old-fashioned protection.
There's a few things in there. So there's a load of schemes going up to train far more of them. We're looking for about 1,000 of them in primary care over the next couple of years in that time frame. And one of the problems has actually been getting training placements for them, because there's no funding associated with it. It's a small business model, general practice. Actually, it's quite hard to take the time out to train somebody if you haven't got any money to do it. However, people are starting to recognise that it's worth the investment, because if they come and train with you, they're likely to come back and work with you. So there are places, and they are taking off. We've got a few examples in the Midlands, South London, places doing. So it's coming. What more of the issues are about standards, the assessment, and actually regulation. It's an unregulated profession currently, and as yet they're not able to prescribe. Once those things are ironed out, I think you'll find a complete mushrooming of this as a new class of healthcare practitioners.
But what about the argument that says if we're going to waste money training half-cocked doctors, we might as well use the money to train proper doctors?
Well, to train somebody from a medical student through to being a qualified GP is at least a decade. Actually,
does it have to take that long?
Yes.
Really?
And I'd argue it should take longer, actually, right? Actually, to do the job properly, yes. I mean, you're not going to argue every developed country in the world has undergraduate and postgrad training of at least that length. Actually, that is the reality. So I don't think we can change that paradigm. But I think the idea of training people to do the job they need to do, and this is the thing about using people and training them in a more appropriate time frame, might be appropriate for specific jobs. We've got to be realistic and honest about what they can and can't do. That complexity, that richness. So again, another model.
What about charging a tenner to see your GP?
No. Free at the point of need.
Make it 50 quid?
No.
No?
No. Not going there.
No, I agree. Listen, we've run over our time, and I'm just, I've had a great evening. I don't know where the time. Look, I just looked up at the clock. I thought, blimey, where's the